All right, so we'd like to welcome you tonight to our second version here of our WIA Coaches Seminar. My name is Christina Navarro. I am currently the Director of Athletics and Recreation at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. We're joined here tonight with Michael Saul, who's our Associate Athletic Director, and then two of our student athletes, so Spencer Butterfield and Paige Taylor, member of our track and field team with Paige, and then our men's soccer program with Spencer. So the agenda for tonight is really kind of twofold. The first piece, I've asked Spencer and Paige to join us in between some of their classes and exams today to talk through a little bit of their transition to college and what they've done as high school student athletes and now college student athletes to help with that transition. So I'm going to start as kind of the moderator, and then at the second half, we'll go through what the PLI for us, the Pioneer Leadership Institute, is and how we've tried to support incoming freshmen. So Spencer, why don't we start with you? First question for you would be, what were some of the biggest challenges you experienced as a freshman student athlete transitioning to UW-Platteville?
I think that for me personally, one of the biggest challenges was the whole aspect of time management. I think that in high school, I was able to balance school and athletics pretty well, because on a club team, I would practice late at night, or on a high school team, I would practice right after the school day. But with this, in the collegiate setting, excuse me, you go on road trips that take a whole weekend, and they could be states away. And so learning to balance the whole academics and athletics, doing my homework on my lap in the bus, that was probably the biggest challenge I had so far, or freshman year.
So balancing time management, some great things to consider for us as we, as administrators, try to support our incoming transition student athletes. How about you, Paige? What were some of the biggest challenges you would say you experienced back when you were a freshman coming from high school into college?
I would say just in general, once you get to college, you have entire control over your schedule and your setup, and figuring out the schedule that works for you, and you still have time to wind down and anything else you want to do. It can be a little difficult because even like you go from your parents helping or making dinner to you pick what you want at stations or wherever else you're eating on campus, and just thinking about the end goal that you truly want. Because like I didn't have as much issues with the time management, because in high school I did 2 sports, I worked a job, and I was involved in a lot of clubs, and one of them was on like the state level. So I had weekends where I was leaving midday Friday to go to Green Bay for the district meeting or things like that. So that time management for me just carried over on a different level, and like it still applies today. I work as an RA on campus now, so finding out the schedule for me was the big challenge, because once I have a schedule, my day goes so much nicer when I know about what I'm doing.
So definitely kind of having a plan, it sounds like, and trying to stick to the plan so that you can put everything together in the big puzzle of what it is to get through your week. So Spencer, back to you. Do you want to share a little bit about your role on the team? I know you play quite a role on the men's soccer team. So just from an athletic standpoint, kind of what resonates with you from your athletic identity?
Yeah, so my athletic career, I guess I would say in collegiate setting, has been pretty interesting. I came in as a freshman, and I worked my butt off the whole summer beforehand, got a starting spot, and then immediately got injured. And then the next year when I was a sophomore, I kind of rode the bench the entire year. And then junior year, I finally cracked the starting position again. So I've kind of done all things, like as a starter, injured for the entire season, bench warmer. So I've kind of done the entire, run the gauntlet, you could say, with regard to like player positions on the team. Currently, I'm the captain of the team, so it's kind of cool to go from freshman all the way up to that last level. And I guess my main focus right now would be to connect with anybody that's injured or bench warmer or starter, all across the board, and give them the experience that I had when I was a freshman. Kind of put my arm on their shoulder and make sure that they're welcome here, I guess.
Quite a story, and just seeing your leadership now, it's really, I can see the different struggles that you've overcome to bring you to this leadership role. I should mention too that Spencer is currently our PSAC president, our Pioneer Student Athlete Advisory Committee president, and is really well respected by our staff, our students, and our community members. Paige, do you want to share a little bit kind of on your athletic journey from high school to now, and your sport and where you've been?
So I compete in the throws events in track and field, and it's what I've done all along. And the big one for me was freshman year. I decided to switch from glide to rotational and shot put, which I knew was going to be a lot of work going in, but I didn't quite expect the amount of work and frustration it could be. Like, I didn't hit close to my high school PR until last indoor, but it's just, for me, it's, you have to look at the big picture in college, because the reality of being a starter or being one of the fastest on the team when you walk in the door is tiny. And I'm in a really unique spot too, because when I started, I was the first female thrower to be studying engineering. And now we finally have another female engineer in the throws, and she and I get along really well. Funny enough, she's actually in my mentor group for PLI. So, like, I click with the guys in a different way than some of the other throwers, just because, like, all our guys study engineering. So we'll be standing there talking about, oh, how'd this class go? Or we'll be talking about different professors when it gets closer to class registration. And they're just like, what are you talking about? Engineering. So it's an interesting circle, because I'm a very big advocate for you support the entire team, not just who you like on the team or your event group, but supporting everyone, because they say it in high school, but I feel it really applies in college. You're a family. You spend so much time with your teammates that sometimes by the time indoor is done, we're sick of each other for a little bit. So it's a good time for spring break. But we get along to the point that, like, we have each other's backs.
Sure. It's a great just observation that I'll bring out too for our high school coaches. It's just the difference between a team sport and what would be perceived to be more of an individual sport. So myself, as a former track and field athlete, and Michael Salm here as a former men's soccer athlete, I think there's some parallelisms to Spencer's background and maybe Paige and I. I was more on the jump side, Paige, instead of throw side. That shot put rotational situation never quite went well for me. I think I would have dropped it on my foot, but as we keep going forward, javelin was my thing. What I'd like to maybe focus or shift to now is, you've talked a lot about your athletics role and kind of how you've helped identify how you can support people on your teams. I'm curious, if we go back to you, Spencer, kind of your academic side of things. And so as you came into your role as a freshman student, what were some of the ideas or different meaningful experiences you had to chart your course with your major choice and in different aspects of the academic side?
So again, that was really interesting. I came in as a freshman thinking wholeheartedly that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. Like that was my goal. It was like a dream that I had. And then it took me until the end of my sophomore year to figure out that that wasn't necessarily the path that was correct for me. And there's a lot of pride that's kind of wrapped up in that decision. You know, you have to make the decision that I'm changing my major, not because I don't have the mental capacity to take these classes, but because I just don't enjoy them. You know, I would go to all my classes dragging my feet, and I would call my parents and talk to my advisors, and they told me, like, this is not how you should be feeling going into your major classes, you know? So for me, I had a couple good upperclassmen friends in the team that I talked to and said, hey, are you guys feeling this way? And they said, no, we love it. And so that's when I heard it from one of my peers, that's when I was like, okay, this is a change that I need to make. And from there, I just went to our school's counseling services and said, these are the things I'm interested in. These are the credits I have, you know, what are my options? And they sat me down and said, okay, if you take this route, you're gonna be here for 5, this route, you're gonna be here for 3 years. And these are the career opportunities at the end of each one. And so I kind of had to take all those and mull over them for a few days and finally make a decision to change majors. But I think it all really stemmed from the advice that I got, not only from my advisor, but from the upperclassmen that I had on my team.
There's some great points, and maybe just to bring a few out for our high school coaches, thinking about how you can support your upper class juniors and seniors who are looking for that college experience, connecting them with your guidance counselor office, helping them kind of think about the different myriad of opportunities are available. And if they are being recruited or looking to play college sport, thinking about not just making that decision based on where you want to athletically continue, but also academically. And I from my lens, if a student's not happy academically, it's going to really influence their performance on the field or the playing surface. Paige, from your perspective, so did you always know you wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and how did your high school experience maybe relate to how you got to UW-Platteville?
So I knew at first when I started high school, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I worked at a summer school for a summer and said, there's no way I can do this for the rest of my life. And I kind of tossed some different ideas around, and the one thing I really liked about engineering was the problem solving, and it's so versatile. So my senior year, I took the majority of the classes I needed to get my STEM certificate, and I kind of knew I was going to be in the minority when I did it. I was the only girl in my autos class and the prereq for autos. But like my senior year, I took a principles of engineering class and a civil engineering and architecture class. And while I liked the civil engineering side, I'd kind of been doing a little bit of my own research and like the fact that mechanical was so versatile. You can go into pretty much anything with mechanical. And Platteville was actually one of my two choices I was considering. And the other one was a D2 school in Minnesota. And when I decided I wanted to do sports, Platteville was actually where I ended up because of that, for the balance. And it's known as the engineering school in Wisconsin for a reason. But
You're happy with your choice so far?
yes,
Good.
I just this past summer figured out like what path I really want to go into with a internship out in the foundry. So
Very cool.
like it makes a difference finding what you do enjoy, because I've had classes in my major where I'm like, this is not my favorite thing, but it's kind of more along the path. I know I don't want to do the research and design side because it's at a desk, where the classes I like is the manufacturing, the stuff where you're up and around and doing things. And that's where my interests are.
That's awesome. I think for our high school coaches, a big takeaway from that is just thinking about what makes you can see what makes Paige excited and come alive as she talks about engineering, and we call Butters on the left here, Butters, as he comes alive with his choice and his opportunity to move forward. As we kind of go into this, Michael Salm and I also were transfer student athletes, as it kind of changed our majors from time to time. And I would attest to the fact that once you find kind of that happiness or that fit academically, it really does pay dividends as you look at your athletic performance aspects as well. So one last question before we let Spencer and Paige go off to take their exams and do their duties in the residence halls today. If we think about, we've talked about the student and the athlete, and now I'd like to think about more of the social entity, or how you maintain kind of this holistic vision of yourself as a person outside of your sport, right? I know there's some challenges as we are in this pandemic with COVID and very strict ways in which you can interact, but maybe reflecting on your past 2 to 3 years here at Platteville, what have been some strategies you've used to kind of keep the balance in your life? So Spencer, let's start with you.
So for me, I kind of struggled with the whole lifestyle my freshman, sophomore year, because doing athletics in a collegiate setting is a different experience than a regular student, right? We're here at a Division III school, and you look on your Snapchat and all your buddies are going to big Wisconsin Badger games, but you have a game at Whitewater tomorrow. So you're, in your room, reading a book, watching Netflix, it's a different lifestyle. And that was something that I had to kind of get over freshman, sophomore year. And then you really grow out of that. And you grow out of that, I think, because you realize that the experiences that you're having because you're an athlete are much more fun and much more rewarding than going to the Badger games every weekend. So strategies for me would be that I've used over the past couple of years have just been spending a lot of time with my roommates and teammates and people from other teams as well. I feel like because we're all student athletes, that's kind of like an automatic foot in the door to be best friends. You know, so if you meet somebody that's also a student athlete, you instantly hit it off, and your community just totally opens up as a result of that.
Well said. Well said. How about Paige, from your perspective, the social balance? How have you identified or found ways? I know you're very busy with your work, your sports, your academics. How do you find a sense of balance from a social standpoint?
I have I have a club that I do that kind of is related to my major, but at the same time, that's my social outlet. But a lot of times too, if my freshman year I had the opportunity and I chose not to be a part of the Women in STEM LLC, where you live on a wing with all women that are studying different STEM fields. And I chose not to do that because I wanted to meet people outside of my major. So I had that different group of academics, sports, and then just a different group. So it's not always about this or this. Like my teammates, we've done a lot of game nights and a lot of movie nights, especially within the women's throws. But at the same time, there's all been times where we've said, I'm passing. I either need to spend time by myself, which is a thing, or like we have friends outside of each other. Sports is not your life, and finding that way to have some semblance of just you and your friends it can be difficult, but I found it's very meaningful, especially because a lot of the times I'm either athlete or RA. So having that balance just means so much to me. Like this coming weekend, my balance is my brother who goes here too. He and I are having dinner together because I helped him out with something a few weeks ago. So he's
That's
making
great.
me dinner.
That's great. I think my biggest takeaway from what you both shared is just the importance to find little opportunities for a sense of normalcy, right? And maybe one of the biggest differences I've recognized with student athletes I've worked with over the last 10 years or so at several different divisions is we as athletes crave a little bit of that normalcy in life, that you can kind of just take a breath or take a pause and not have somebody judging you or pushing you to the limit, so that you can kind of just be yourself and just go into chill mode. And sometimes it's easier for us to do that around people who aren't on our teams. And so thinking about that was a huge difference that I've noticed from a lot of our athletes, is sometimes you need to just tune out from the team. In that off season, it's really important to have some downtime. Now, I would say you don't want too much downtime in the sense that, everybody goes nuts when we can't practice, but having some structure and balance. So maybe before we dismiss you guys to go off to your days, is there anything final you might say as we've kicked off our Pioneer Leadership Institute, kind of the legacy that you'd like to leave, Butters as the president, or Paige really being kind of a instrumental figure in our leadership mentor program?
Thinking about it off the top of my head, the legacy that I think I want the whole PLI realm to have would be just kind of a support system. Platteville's a really small community, and I came from out of state, and when I came here, I was like accepted into a family immediately. And that's why I think a lot of people will come here and they stay the whole 4 years. Freshman, sophomore year, a lot of people talk about transferring or doing this and that, but like once you find that group and you're really accepted, then the retention rate is a lot higher. People stay. And so I think the legacy for PLI is to connect the upperclassmen immediately with the freshmen when they come in, so they feel like if they get into any bad situation in regards to athletics or academics or social life, then they can turn to anybody at the school in the athletic department and have someone to talk to.
Well said, President Butters. Good luck on that test today. Paige, we'll finish up with you here. Your legacy or things that you would like people to remember about you and what you've given to PLI this year as you kick off things?
In addition to like what Spencer was saying about the support system, just letting the freshmen know that just because you're an athlete, it doesn't mean that's your whole life here. I have teammates that all they do is sports and go home for classes, and I have teammates that are involved in other extracurriculars, and they tend to be so much happier and have a better mindset when things don't go well at practice, just because this isn't the only thing they're focusing on. You can do more than just sports, and it's about finding the balance and really knowing your limits when it comes to what you can meaningfully do. Find something that's meaningful. Don't just be in something because it looks good on the resume.
Well said, Paige. Well, I appreciate your time today. I know you have a lot of freshmen to go wrangle, so enjoy your day. And Spencer, good luck on your test. So we'll let you guys go and we'll just transition here quickly. All right, so clearly you can see those are two of our rockstar student athletes that have really been helpful to us kicking off what we call our Pioneer Leadership Institute. And what we'd like to do in the second half here today is Alicia's asked us to walk through a little bit of how we support students and our student leaders from not only a campus perspective, but from an athletics department perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So give me just a moment to pull this up. And we're going to walk through kind of where the PLI came from, what the focus of it is, and how we continue to focus on this for our students. So you can actually access this as well from our Let's Go Pioneers. I'll just actually show you how to navigate to this if you'd like to follow along at some other time. So you should see here, our Pioneer Student Athlete Advisory Committee really serves as the, I would say, pilot group for our PLI, Pioneer Leadership Institute. And a big piece of what we've tried to do this year is instill in our students the opportunity to kind of be the change or leave the legacy with the freshmen that transition in. So our big priorities or focus has been onboarding our freshmen into the college experience. So if you go to our Inside Athletics area, you can see our organizational chart, our mission, our sport performance and sports medicine aspect. But what we really tried to build out is our Pioneer Leadership Institute that kicked off this September. So if you look at this, we looked at a little bit of a rebrand of our logo. For us, our pickaxes is kind of the signature branding piece. But for us, it's how do we attract and retain students, and specifically, how do we keep them engaged? So providing a transformational student and staff experience really is the crux of what we try to do here. The mission of the Pioneer Leadership Institute is kind of threefold: developing, challenging, and supporting both students and staff via what we'll say is three different pillars: intentional leadership, career development programming, interactive workshops, and then peer mentorship initiatives. And the bigger vision of this is really trying to provide the word transformational student and staff experience. And I always like to define, what does transformational mean? It means you're taking someone from point A to point B and not just a parallel mentality. You're trying to raise the game or elevate the game. And in theory, it would be an exponential growth process for that individual. We talk a lot about the growth mindset and how we can kind of instill in individuals from the day they come in as a freshman moving forward, or as a new staff member moving forward, so that they leave better than when they came in. And I'm going to turn it to my Associate Athletic Director, Mike, who's also a product of the WIAC as a student athlete, to talk through a little bit of our student athlete development pillars. So Mike, take it away.
Yeah, so as Christina said, we really want to highlight how we're trying to be intentional with the experience that our student athletes are having. Part of that intentionality in the college setting is known as high impact practices, and something that is interwoven into those is shared experiences with your peers. When you share an experience with your peers, it sticks and it becomes a point of camaraderie that brings the group together. So the first one at the bottom there is personal enhancement. As Paige kind of hinted at, personal enhancement is key, as well as President Butters. One, the time management is massive. I think Paige hit on a huge one, though. It's the freedom aspect of the college athletics experience. Is all of a sudden you can go to that dining hall and, man, pizza is there. Ice cream is there every night, right? And maybe it's like, okay, after a really hard max out day, I'm going to have ice cream. Probably shouldn't have that, as Butters said, the day before playing whitewater, which disclaimer, I'm a product of Whitewater, so that's where we're at with there at WIAC. But personal enhancement, how do you become, the full and best version of yourself? We reflect on career and major choices in there as well, and then also exposing them to all of their resources across campus, whether it's mental health and wellness, the career development office, the Office of Multicultural and Student Affairs, OMSA, on campus as well, and really trying to expose them to all of the support pillars that are going to be there across their 4 years. Sophomore year, once they've invested in themselves, all freshman year, sophomore year, let's push them out. Let's actively promote community engagement initiatives. Platteville is a university, but Platteville is also a community, and we want to be reinvesting in that community around us. Sophomore year is also the first time that they can join the Pioneer Student Athlete Advisory Committee. PSAC right there in the middle is kind of the hub of everything that we do. It's made up of a sophomore, a junior, and a senior from all of our sport programs, and they really are our barometer for where the athletics department is at, how is the student athlete experience going across all of our sport programs, and what initiatives do they want to take up to invest back into the Platteville community. Finally, sophomore year is also when we try and look at intentional career development. First, self-reflection on what do I want to do with my life. Paige hit on that too, as well as Butters. What do you want to do with your life? Sophomore year is key. As Spencer said, it's a time where you can still switch majors and finish school on time. It's not going to set you back a year necessarily. Paige hit it home as what am I curious about? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? What ignites that flame inside me? That really makes those classes worth going to. And so with career development, why that's key, by the end of the sophomore year, you want to have a resume, cover letter, do a mock interview, and really be prepared to get that entry-level internship so that junior year rolls around, you can get an internship in the field you are very interested in, and senior year, boom, you are a student athlete on your resume, you have an entry-level internship, and you have a game-changing internship right there. And finally, junior year, all about leadership development. What is your communication style? What is the communication style of those around you? And I guess, long story short, how do you become that galvanizing leader that can rally the team around you so that you are better than your individual components? Leadership is about bringing out the best around you and creating a culture of excellence from the very first day freshmen are on campus to hopefully those NCAA championship appearances that we're looking forward to in the future. So that's kind of, I guess, the 4 years on campus, and then alumni engagement comes after that. We're pioneers for life here. And if Christina, you want to touch on that a little bit, go ahead.
Excellent, Mike, thanks. I think the biggest piece for our high school coaches to really take away here is from the second that a student athlete becomes a college student athlete, moving from that high school space, it's really focused on intentional engagement. And a big piece of what we've tried to do is build their experience from the freshman to the junior, or the sophomore to the junior, senior year and beyond, so that we have a happy alumni base that wants to come back and continuously support, give, but also provide mentorship support from a job perspective or opportunity for our students to network. We also think about, in one piece I'll share from the staff development side, and here it's just a bit on how we call, or what we call, our different aspects. So our Rising Pioneers is the cohort model that we call our freshmen, so that automatically they are part of something that's larger than themselves or their team. And within that, for us at UW-Platteville, we have 16 teams or unique teams. Our Pioneer Difference Makers, we think about our sophomores who are out in the community, and it's a little challenging in COVID times to really mobilize this effort, but going out and being those ambassadors of our student athlete brand here on campus. And our juniors and seniors, so you just heard from two of them on here. President Butters, as we call him, and Paige are some of our really crucial pioneer leaders that help to train a body of 65 upperclassmen to give back to these rising pioneers. And I think from the freshman transition experience, the hope is that you start to instill that culture of you're about the entire department. And you're not necessarily only focused on your sport, not only focused on your academic mentality, you're focused on your student, athlete, and social kind of holistic development process. And at the end of this, our graduation, we have something called the PD Awards at the end of the year that celebrates our students and our athletes and their successes both on and off the playing surfaces. Our pilot year here, we've kind of already mentioned this, but some of our biggest focus is to mobilize the PSAC. For us, that's Pioneer Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And that's a body of individuals that represent us at the WIAC and also at the NCAA level. I know several of the high schools have kind of moved to this model as well of mobilizing your student athletes in a leadership body in space so that they can be a bit more well-rounded. The other piece that I would just draw out is what we do in terms of focus of our sessions. So in August, as our freshmen moved in, we focused on medical clearance dates and trying to kick off the semester. This year was unique in the sense we weren't able to have fall championships or really fall competition. So engaging our athletes and our freshmen became even more important. Our Pioneer Leadership Institute included both our staff and our students. A big piece from my lens is how do we fill up the bucket of our coaches so that they can also be ambassadors to develop our students. They're the ones day in and day out really spending time with those individuals. September, actually just last night, we focused on defining their purpose. So thinking about what their purpose as a student, as an athlete, and how they can be a contributor to our department, our campus, and the greater community. As we've moved into the next couple meetings here, so I should say last night, October, we talked about how they execute on their plan. And the Chancellor Scholars is a group that we've tried to commingle with this body of individuals. So from the freshman time they enter campus, they are meeting people on campus that aren't in that bubble of athletes only. And so that's been an opportunity for some of our higher profile students and also those that are coming more from a participation standpoint to enhance their network of individuals. So in a nutshell, that's how we really focus on the freshman transition in, and everything really builds upon that freshman experience mobilizing forward. We'd be happy to take any follow-up questions from those of you that work with high school student athletes on what you might do to collaborate across your specific high school, utilizing your guidance counselors, utilizing some of your career development offices. So I will share our contact information at the end of this, and feel free to reach out for a follow-up. But we thank you for your time tonight, and we hope everybody stays safe during these times. It's a great day to be a pioneer.
Thanks, everyone.